Response video sort of to the Modern Mystic. It's been a while. Notice he doesn't have as many ads, which is really good. But anyway, at least not those talking ones, which are really annoying. So anyways, this last video, I've been watching a few of his videos, and the last one was on the debt thing, and there are these people out there arguing that deficits aren't a problem, we should spend more money, and that's how we get out of this mess, and it's just completely insane. So I thought I would just throw in a different kind of metaphor for what I see as the problem. And so let's just say you have a island, whatever. Say this. We'll go back to this. Make it really simple. And there's three guys, and one guy does grapes, one guy does wheat, and one guy does peanuts. Right? So they can make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. They can all be happy because they do their separate thing. And it starts off with each guy. The guy who does the peanuts, he owns 1/3 of the island, he does peanuts. The other guy owns 1/3, he does the wheat, and the other guy goes 1/3, he does the grapes. And everything works kind of nice because they all kind of have to do their thing and all that, and there's no, they're all making their contribution to be able to, in the end, make sandwiches for all of them to eat, and they're all happy. So what happens is, let's just say, Jelly Guy gets sick, and so he can't do his work, and so he needs to somehow get somebody to do his work so the jelly is produced. And so let's just say Peanut Butter Guy says, yeah, I'll do it for you, but you got to give me ownership of your grape fields. You can still work them, but I own them, and you'll have to pay me a little fee every year, to rent the property from me, because I'm going to own the property now. And so you can just see now here it starts. Because now a guy doesn't have to do any work, and he's going to get income. So he's going to get 3 or 10% of the work labor from Mr. Jelly every year. He's going to get 10% extra jelly, and he's not going to have to give out 10% extra peanut butter. And let's say he does the same thing to Mr. Wheat, and so now he owns all three, and he's gaining more and more income. And now he can afford to basically pay them, Jelly and Peanut Butter Guy, to give them back their rent money. To basically farm his peanut field. So now he doesn't even have to do the work of making peanuts anymore, doing the peanut butter part. He can just sit back and Wheat and Jelly do all the work to create the sandwich. And that's basically what happens in our world. And the more power this one guy gets, the more he can manipulate. Because now if he wants to extort even more out of them, he could just buy up a whole bunch of jelly one year and say, look, I'll pay you extra if you give me double jelly this year. And then the next year he could say, I'm not going to buy any jelly from you. And then Jelly would be starving because Jelly can't make any money. And now he could really extort Jelly because now Jelly's going to be desperate. And so now he could make a contract and say, well, I want to buy 5 years of your future labor at half the price. And because Jelly's starving, Jelly's going to say, okay, you can have 5 years of my future labor at half the price because I got no choice because I'm going to die if I don't do this deal with you. And that's the world we have. That's the simple fact of it. This whole idea of ownership. There's nothing. I mean, I know we all love this concept of I own my shirt and I own my pants and my balls. Yeah, fine. But when we own something that collects income, that's when this equation gets really fucking tricky. The idea of owning free, income producing, where you don't have to do any work, you just have to sit on your ownership. That concept is fundamentally, in my opinion, broken all to hell. That's where an economic system that depends on anything like that is broken. It's fucked. People should always have to do the substance of the work. And we have that now with these exaggerated wages, too. We have people doing real work for a little tiny bit of money, and people doing almost no work for a big, huge pile of money. And that's the same basic thing. It's just because their work has to do with manipulating ownership or manipulating patronage or preferential treatment in their different little glass and ivory towers of privilege. And it's not a real world anymore. And so what's happened with this debt thing? So going back to the island example, is it starts off with just this ownership of the income producing property, the property you can rent to somebody, the tools that you could rent to somebody, and then we start making it a commodity, future labor. And that's basically what the whole economy now. The rich have gotten so rich that they own everything. They own all the property, they own all the businesses, they own everything, and now they've basically extorted the people into mortgaging decades of labor into the future. The only way you could pay back these national debts, it's going to take decades to pay them back. There's no resources to pay them back. If you keep the ownership equation the way it is, and you keep the labor equation the way it is, there's no way you can glean enough income, a high enough percentage out of labor to pay this money back. And so we're talking about the fact that they've basically mortgaged the future, just years and decades into the future, and that's the limitation, is how far into the future can you go? How much can you own? You own everything that exists in the now. Now they also own the value of what exists in the future. I've made the point that they essentially own stuff that hasn't been made yet, and they're collecting rent on that stuff. It's like they're collecting rent on a house that hasn't even been built yet, as if somebody's living in it. That's how far their extortion has gone, the extortion of their advantage and their wealth and the power that gives them. And this is the real corruption of a system. This consolidation of wealth is the real evil. There's nothing. The fundamental economy can stay just the way it is. It can keep functioning. People can keep working. The whole thing can keep working. And the only thing that's going to break it is the fact that we have this just unsustainable rental problem. Because if you're taking so much rent out of somebody, they can't afford it. They can't afford to work anymore if the taxes are too high on their labor. And that's essentially what we're creating, a circumstance where we're taxing labor so high, real work, and we're taxing income off of ownership so low, and we're just making the rich richer and the poor getting poorer, and the poor having less and less incentive to do any work because there's no value provided in return. They're not going to be able to sustain themselves on the money they're going to get for the work. So it's just completely a destructive circumstance. They can't make enough money to pay their bills, and so you end up with this welfare state because there's nothing else. You can't do anything else because there's certain minimums you got to take care of. Slave owners had to take care of their slaves. I mean, you weren't going to make the investment and let them die in the street. And the same thing is our circumstance. You can't just kill people off. Number one, the public isn't going to tolerate it. But as a practical matter, it doesn't work either, because you're not going to get any work out of dying people. But this is the unsustainability of this wealth consolidation scenario. And even though we don't have something called a monarchy, we have a circumstance where so few people control so much that we've created the same kind of serfdom, the same time of real huge income interest problem. There's such a demand for their income, there's such a rental that has to be paid, that it's sucked all the value out of a regular person's life. The regular person doesn't have there's no value left. There's no real work to do. There's no real honest wage to earn, and it's a feudal existence. And so the whole thing is going to break down. The whole peanut butter sandwich is going to be ruined. Merely because the rich guy is just pulled too much out of wheat and jelly. Mr. Peanut is destroyed the other two individuals, and because he went way beyond just taking advantage, and now he's basically going to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. He's going to kill the very thing that he was living off of, and that's sort of what the rich are doing here. They're going to destroy. They're going to annihilate civilization, and because in the future they're not even going to be able to afford the moats and the fences and the hardware and the tanks and the armies they're going to need to protect them when they really create masses of desperation, and they're doing it. And they're going to do it. Merely because they're going to claim that I have a right to own. I have a right to own all this income generating ownership. Everything I own must produce income. You must pay me to walk on my street, my sidewalk, my industry, my store, my whatever it is. They want their percentage. And the percentage they're sucking out of the economy is way too high, and they're producing absolutely nothing of value to justify it. It's absolutely insane economics. We should pay people to do work. We should not pay them to sit on their ass and own. It is just stupid. Fucking goddamn stupid. and I don't know why Nick defends it so, and thinks that that somehow works. It can't go anywhere. It can't, unless you put some way to some way to stop it from getting out of control, from Mr. Peanut getting too much extortion power over the other producers. It can't go anywhere good. It's completely destructive. All good incentive, all value in that is destroyed, and it just creates the most insidious kind of welfare state there could possibly be. These people who believe they're entitled to their ownership. I mean, it's just insidious nonsense. Anyway, no need, look at that. Made it under time for a change. Okay, so enough of a video. Thank you very much.